Buzzers, you are tuned into the Legion After Show. We are talking about Legion Season 3, the final season, Episode 2, Chapter 21. Stay tuned.
You're tuned in to AfterBuzz TV, the ESPN of TV talk. Now, let the buzz begin.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to the Legion After Show here on AfterBuzz TV. I'm your host, Alana Jordan. Very excited to be talking about Legion Season 3, Episode 2, Chapter 21. We're going to be talking about the plan to kidnap Carrie, to flip the switch, amp up some powers. Clark going full-on flying squirrel situation. Yowza. A super intense tea party, and finding out after a very highly anticipated confrontation with Syd that it's not always blue. Sometimes things go red. Very excited, too, because here with two awesome people. Of course, Jeff Williams in the house.
Yes, thanks for having me. Always loved Legion Episode 2. We're out here. Let's go.
And I love your shirt.
Appreciate it. Got a rep. You know, Spider-Man's coming out this week, so I had to rep it.
Yes. And one of our favorite people ever, Zack Wilson.
Hey, guys. Thank you for having me.
Of course.
Christian and I are becoming interchangeable as people. At least that's what they keep telling us on Marvel Movie News. So I figured, he's out of town. I'll step in.
I thought he
If
was
Christian Platt could... Oh, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I thought he was Christian, too. You just said that now.
There you go. He's the stand-in. We like to just...
You just switch.
Switch him out. You're the stunt double for Christian Platt, who unfortunately could not be here. Alexa Capiello, also not here with us this week, but hopefully we'll have the whole squad in next week. In the meantime, very excited to have Zack Wilson here.
Yeah, let's talk about some Legion and figure out why I've lost my mind.
So, wanted to get your
wearing.
overall thoughts on this episode.
I thought this was a good episode. This is a fun one. It made sense, which is not always like something you, in a good way, but it's not always something you can rely on Legion doing. But I'm tracking it. I think there's a lot of great stuff about. I love the scene between David and Syd. Their relationship dynamic has been like a focal point for the show. It's been a through line at least for the show, and so I'm glad that we're checking in with that and seeing how those two characters are going. I can't decide if it's feeding into some of my crazy conspiracy theories that I'll share with you guys later, but it definitely is progressing and moving forward as we go backwards through time.
I love your conspiracy theories, too. And be sure to stick around for the whole episode, because not only will we be giving our predictions, we also got a little news and gossip for you guys, and our own special segment, Is This the Real Life? Is This Reality? Where we kind of dissect what is in David's head versus what is not, and some of our conspiracies. Jeff, what did you think of the show?
I thought it was very straightforward this time. I was talking to producer producer Ryan in there. And
my
God. He asked us, he's like, so what about the show? I was like, I actually understood the whole thing. And like last episode, like we talked about the first 20 minutes, I sat there, started to write stuff, and I was like, I don't know if this is the right show because there is no characters. No, but this time it was very straightforward. It was a lot of action, which I liked. There's a lot of different stuff going on, and it was just a good episode. And yeah, there's a lot to get into, so let's do it.
I think you brought up a really good point, too, like kind of how last episode kicked off this season and how it is thematically and stylistically very different from the first two seasons, which I think is a really good move. I was kind of nervous a little bit after season 2 finale, where I was like, oh, David's a rapist, so, how are we gonna still look at things through his eyes? Yeah! But this season, I thought it was great introducing it and seeing everything through Switch's eyes, through Jai's eyes, and I thought that was really well done, this episode in particular, kind of kicking us off with their relationship, and seeing that she is following him, and she has been following him. I really liked that their whole introduction, the first episode, he stresses that he had the monster for 33 years, and it's like that Jesus allegory where, you know, he died at 33, and then this kind of almost antichrist illusion that they have going on, and then kind of her as his misguided follower. I just really like seeing everything through her eyes and seeing kind of how she's a little bit broken and how she would be kind of likely to get sucked into this David cult. What did you guys think about their dynamic and how they fleshed it out this episode, kind of going in from last episode?
With Switch?
Switch, yeah.
So I'm like, oh, wait,
Shiny
I gotta
Switch, yeah.
You gotta drive all. There's so many names. There's already
I'll
a
just
lot
say
going
Switch.
on, Legion.
Squirrel called her Switch. Squirrel got kicked out of a plane. We'll talk about that later. We'll honor Squirrel. She's
My man
Switch.
Squirrel just getting disrespected left and right.
Wig snatched, literally. Jeez, God. Okay, anyway, that's a later topic, but...
Yeah, but like between Switch and David, at first, I feel like she's allowing him or being part of this because he's opening up to her. And she doesn't really have anybody else. Obviously, her dad is elsewhere in a robot or whatever. So with him confiding in her, him telling her the truth or what she thinks is the truth is making her more comfortable, being willing to show David her powers and everything, and being willing to learn from him and just help them out in general because it's kind of dangerous. There's people going after. I mean, she knows people are trying to kill them, and for her to still be sticking around, she has to at least have some kind of good feeling about it.
Well, I think it comes down to Syd said it perfectly. It's teenage girls with daddy issues. For Switch, this is the first time somebody has looked at her and looked at her powers and not said this is something you need to I'm gathering from the tapes and everything. Not this is something you need to be careful with. This is something that is dangerous. You're dangerous because you have this. He looked at her and said, "You're amazing. You're powerful. I want to make you even better than you are now." And that's probably like he valued her. He immediately valued her upon meeting her. And yes, from an audience perspective, you can see that he's sort of valuing her in terms of her usefulness to him. But for her, that's still being valued. And that's something that she hasn't felt before. And that's a very seductive thing to do to especially a young person.
And that's something that we see with cult leaders a lot. So, it's this. David is a textbook malignant narcissist. Like, he's doing the upfront love bombing, like, you're so great. And I think she feels that connection, too, because we see with the tapes that you brought up, we see, chapter 20, this one that's consequences, and that's really highlighted. But last episode, chapter 13 and 14, which is, the importance of choosing your moment, and that, present is a feeling and everything, and kind of making us cognizant of she's always kind of questioning where she is in the world, and that there is a physical monster in this timeline, this time forest that is out to get her, that she can feel that relate. To her, Farouk is the bad guy because he's the monster in the closet.
He's David's monster. Like, so it'll be really interesting to see who or what her demon is that's hiding in the time stream. Is it like Farouk's brother?
I was wondering that because when I saw last week's episode, I thought it was Farouk at first because he grabbed her from the time hallway, and I guess it's not because you still see the demons in there. He just like grabbed her and was able to take her, I guess, while she was
astral plane.
Yeah, so I'm interested to see who's gonna be her demon.
Well, it's interesting because Farouk also dropped in the premiere that he was 2,000 years old. That hadn't been previously established, right?
It said that he was very, very old and that he had gone from kind of being to being for years.
Okay, I had apparently missed or at least the length of it. When he said he was very, very old, I thought like 100 or 150. 2,000 was a major shift from what I thought of that. I thought that character was.
I'm not sure if they have expressly said the time until now. That's a good point.
Yeah,
too.
What's the spectrum on very old? Like 150 to 2,000? What is how do you just describe? How old are you? I'm very old. All right, nice.
How old are you? I'm Mel Brooks old. I'm a 2,000-year-old man.
But I thought it was kind of interesting, too, because like a narcissist, and he is saying, I want to make you the best you can be, but the phrasing is, I want to fix you, which is kind of a big thing, is he's like, I want to fix you, I want to fix your powers. I can't be brought into these powers, so therefore they're broken, is how he sees it. It's how everything relates back to him. And so it's going to be interesting to see if she ever really kind of catches on to that, if that's going to be something that is ultimately the undoing for her.
It's an interesting point for David that the idea, it's one of those things like you call it like narcissism, which narcissism is the idea that you believe everything about the world revolves around you. But the fact is, for David, it has revolved around him. Everything has been about him to this point. People have searched for him. Some, like, a monster latched onto him and destroyed his life. Now there's a group of people who are hunting him. So he has been at the center of this. Like, the whole conspiracy last year ended up being around him.
True, but it also was around Syd and, you know, Syd's whole moment where it's like, you are not the hero, I am, and then that whole thing getting thwarted by Lenny kind of stepping in. So we see all of these other different heroes and anti-heroes and kind of his fixated viewpoint. And then this point, we're seeing some serious, like, Kilgrave behavior. Like, he's going full-fledged, like, gaslighting to the max, like, where they're not pulling any punches, where they're like, this is representing gaslighting, because he literally is using a gas to manipulate and light to manipulate these people.
I don't even know if you can call it gaslighting, because gaslighting implies that you, like, manipulated. This is just you drugged them.
Yeah, but I mean, this is clearly an illusion for narcissistic behavior, where that's one of the big things is gaslighting, and it's like this metaphor was not subtle. It's like a physical.
Straight in your face.
Yeah, it's like it was as in your face as the gas was. It's like, come on, man. But we see, you know, he drugs Lenny, and we see this moment where, you know, she's upset because she's being sent away, and he tells her to just go get something to eat and smile.
That was the turning point for me, because I could justify, just based on everything else going, even Carrie and what he does to Carrie, I could, like, there's a justification for, again, because he's being hunted, and he tried to just go off on his own, and these people are, like, he watched them murder him. So to manipulate one of their agents to be on his side, I can let that, like, we're in like a war zone. Like, it's one of those, you can bend some morality rules in that way. But what he did to Lenny was like, oh no, he slipped far. That's real bad. If you're manipulating your own people when all it is like, I don't want to go back inside. And
that creepy smile that was just like full-fledged, like when Jessica Jones smiles, and you're like, ah, you're made to do that. It's so gross, and it's like, ugh, such. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was gonna say, and what you're starting to see with Lenny is like you're starting to see a little bit of jealousy as well, or maybe like she's like making sure you know what her territory is. Like, look, you come to me first, and then I go to David. Like, there's an order. Yeah, there's a hierarchy to this.
Well, like she says, she's the major domo, where she's like, look, I've been around like this whole time. Like, you got some powers, but like, don't think that you're gonna come in and usurp me, because ultimately, you know, I need my place too.
Well, let me ask you this: is that the position that she has given herself, or did David give her that position?
I feel like it's kind of a mixture of both, because we had that whole thing last season with Melanie talking about like how Syd basically would never be able to fill that place because it was this fated thing of, you know, the breakfast queen being seated as his right hand kind of. So I feel like to her, it's also, she's been told that that is her role, and to have that taken away from her is something that she wouldn't be able to stand, because it's all she's been given at this point. She's had the rest of her identity stripped away from this man, so this is all she has left.
See, I kind of thought it was like more or less, well, kind of to the same, but I thought she was more, this is what I'm doing, this is the role I'm filling, and if you guys have a problem with it, then deal with it, because we already know David confides in her and trusts her. So if she tells David, hey, I'm gonna be your point person, he's just gonna be more or less okay with it. And I think it's definitely her leading that or making that choice.
Yeah. And I mean, don't forget, Lenny's been through some stuff, like a literal wall.
Yeah.
She transformed like from David's sister and just hijacked her body. Like, Lenny's not had an easy ride of things. It wasn't like she was just chilling in her apartment and David's like, do you want to come for this ride? It's like,
and it's not like she was mentally stable to begin with.
Yeah, she was like, they were bros when they were getting baked in the mental hospital. It's like, yeah, guys, it's, oh. But, I mean, that moment I thought was when it's like, okay, we've seen last season where this was a whole big thing where it was like he drugged Syd and had sex with her against her will, and then now he's making Lenny smile against her will, and we see how he's kind of emotionally manipulating Switch, which I thought was interesting too, because we see the whole thing later with Farouk talking to Syd about how like the emotional versus the physical, and how the emotional is like a much deeper cut, and we see that he is a juxtaposed like perfect foil of that with how he's treating Switch. So he's kind of playing into that, and then ultimately too with Carrie as the big Switch, if you will.
I guess the thing with David that's really interesting is, do you guys see him as a child in a lot of ways?
I think in some ways, but I think mostly he just represents, and I hate to be like, I'm the only woman on the panel, so I'm going to talk about woman things. But boom, I'm the only one on the panel. I'm going to talk about woman things. So I feel like he represents kind of this patriarchal figure that has undermined women and has manipulated and abused women, and kind of a figure that just represents this whole overarching ideal that is this idea that, no, I'm the hero because the world has always told me that I am the hero because I'm the straight cisgendered white man, and that is what I am, and this is what the hero is. Look at all of these heroes.
Yeah.
You know, even in our own Marvel comics, like this is like, I am the stereotype, so how dare you say that I'm crazy and that I need help? Even though they're not really saying you're crazy, they're saying you have some chemical imbalances that need to be adjusted. We don't want to kill you, but we also don't want the world to end. So maybe calm down, future terrorist, and like rein it in a bit.
I guess when I say kid, I don't mean like he's like a 2-year-old, but I think that is true. But I think the closer analogy is to like a 14-year-old who's doing all that stuff, and that doesn't excuse the behavior by any means. But it's that thing of like, he never grew up. Really. So when he's betrayed, he acts like a crazed child who's never been taught how to properly behave. And it's about like how everybody else, like, you messed up this kid. You got to fix this kid. He's still responsible for his own actions. But I think it's interesting to watch him have to react from losing Farouk from his brain and then having this reset to his character, where the world is a completely different color space for him.
Yeah.
Everything changed from that moment. It was, to him, it was being born anew, being like let out of the, like, imagine a teenager who has not been properly taught how to live in the world. And that's what it was, the end of last season was for me watching him. It was when they took him out and then immediately locked him in a cage, it was, you're free now, but stay in this box. And he reacted negatively instead of, it was a negative reinforcement. And he reacted poorly to it, like a child would.
Yeah, but to me it was like, okay, you drugged and raped your girlfriend, so you're doing some pretty messed up stuff, man. You need to be contained.
And that's clearly the story that they're telling with him. And that's the thing, I think that's the analogy that they're making. I think they muddied it a little bit. That was my take on the end of season 2. Is like, I see where the story is and I see where he's going. I think they muddied the analogy a little bit with some of maybe the perspective. Maybe they needed a few extra things, but the analogy's there. No
I like the analogy. I mean, as long as they weren't trying to still push him as a hero, and I think at this point that's definitely not the point.
Oh no, I'm not saying that he's not, but I mean that the locking him in a cage, like, you have this field of characters that were good suddenly being negative. The justification for that shift was so fast from Carrie and Carrie's perspective, and everyone turning on a dime. And the part of that I think like really throws me about it, and why I have like all these weird conspiracy theories, is Farouk's part of it. Farouk being part of it, because he was the villain for 2 years, and that doesn't mean that him being the villain makes David not the villain, but his perspective turned on a dime.
But a lot of that, I think, was showing the emotional manipulation that he encountered as well, like using Melanie as a vessel to then show Syd and have her kind of have that switch, which actually brings us into Syd's big confrontation. However, before we get into that, I know that there's some awesome things that AfterBuzz is bringing to everybody as well.
Yeah, we just want to thank you guys for making us the ESPN of TV talk. You guys have always been commenting and continue to comment, continue to watch this video on YouTube. Give us a thumbs up. If you guys are listening on iTunes, give us that 5 stars and just continue to comment and just talk with us. Talk about the show so we can talk with you guys, because that's what we love to do, talk about the show. And AfterBuzz he's done so much for me. I've been able to talk about Legion. I've been able to talk about all the different other superhero shows out here, and it's just been a great time. So I just want to say thank you guys. Thank you guys for allowing me to be here, and thank AfterBuzz.
Yeah.
Ding.
And especially we want to know your feelings on this one, because this is the big confrontation that has been kind of hinted all of the last episode after we see Syd shooting David repeatedly and murdering him after again murdering him or attempting to in the finale. So we see this kind of one-on-one talk where she takes a piece of the disappeared house and uses it to kind of summon him, which, smart on Syd, man. I like this girl. I like everything that she's about.
Did she summon him?
She just kind of let it be known where she is, where she's like, where it could kind of go through like the dampeners, where it's like a, hey, here's like a pinpoint where like I'm reaching out to you. Like, we'll see if he reaches back out. And so he sends his astral projection.
She like put up a sign that was like, lines are open.
Yeah, pretty much.
What was it? Because I thought it was like a tooth. For some reason, as weird as that sounds,
kind of like a red, like it was something funky.
Maybe I was just so thrown off. I thought it was a tooth. Leave us in the comments. Tell us what you guys thought it was.
Yeah.
Because I could just be thrown totally off.
Was it a tooth?
Exactly.
Was it a house?
If it was a tooth, whose tooth was it?
What is real? What is fake?
I think you were right, Alana. I think it was part of the house, and that makes sense that like that would connect them,
because it's where he was. Yeah, it's like his mental house that with the big giant creepy pig that he created because David's a weirdo. But he's talking about this commune, and she, as Zack points out, is like, look, dude, you're just running a cult with like these poor girls. And he's like, oh, are you jealous? Which is like, F you, man, just F you.
And what I thought was interesting is
wanted to shoot him.
He caught himself in it, like. And that's the thing with the whole split personality thing that he's dealing with, is that like he said it, and I don't know if that was one personality coming forward and then another being like, no, why'd you say that?
Well, he has that. Yeah, we've seen the different, which is also interesting because like we saw the last season we had like Divad, and then we had like Divid, like DVD David, but this is like David 1, David 2, and like Scottish David. Like they all just have like different. I love
how they all have different accents, and one of them was straight up sounding like Patrick Stewart.
I'm into it. I love it. But this whole confrontation that we have, where he keeps reiterating his like, I'm a good person, I deserve love, which was his whole thing in his encapsulation stage. It's like this mantra, and since we're talking about these delusions and these delusions that can kill you, I feel like this is kind of the big thing, is like, is this a delusion? Is it not? Like, what makes you a good person? Is it just saying it? You know, is it the intention there? Because he's saying, I want to go back and fix it. I want to go back in time. And her rationale is, look, dude, you would still be the man who had done this. Even if you go back, I just wouldn't know. Like, it's the difference between drugging me to when I'm unconscious to drugging me to when I'm not. You're still doing something that's not okay.
It's effectively, as far as like what he did to Syd, it's effectively the same thing, because that was like he erased her mind, and then like by taking away the memories that she had, that was removal of consent, because he took away part of the information that she had to have to make the decision in that moment. That's what the end of last season was. And to do it he's just talking about doing it on a bigger scale. It was interesting to hear him say, and I think this was partially him trying to convince himself, it's not about a girl, it's about saving the world. And do you guys think that was earnest, or was that him trying to convince himself and or another personality?
I think he's trying to convince himself, because he's using trying to save the world, trying to use all the love, and she's like, wake up. There is no love between us. There's no love between like you and the rest of the world. You're just crazy. You're gonna destroy the world, and you're drugging women and you're doing all this crazy stuff. She's just trying to wake him up, and it's not working.
Your anger, your entitlement, your misguidedness is what is putting up these issues. And I love that quote when she's like, have you ever heard the quote that men are afraid that women will laugh at them and women are afraid that men will kill them? Because that's something that's reiterated a lot. And I love that this is just on the nose, point blank, where it's like, look, dude, you have a power that you were using that is not okay. And you're, using this advantages, these different kind of gifts that you've been given to manipulate and hurt other people, specifically women. That's not okay. And he's not getting it. And she keeps saying, you, the mind reader, can't see past I. You can't see what I need because you're so narcissistic that you can't even try to see past that.
Yeah.
So do you think that she's going to try to use her love, or next time they meet, you think she's going to like be nicer to him, try to use love to connect with him, or is he going to like see through that? Because
like, is she going to take Farouk's advice where Farouk was basically saying you should emotionally pimp yourself out to him?
Pretty much.
I don't think he was saying emotionally.
Well, first he was saying physically, but then he was saying, I'll teach you how to lie. Like, if you're not going to do the physical, then the emotional works just as well.
I mean, look, she works for a clandestine spy-type agency. It's the honeypot. It's a classic move.
See,
Come on, Syd.
But it's like, she didn't sign up for that, man.
Yeah.
I thought
well, didn't she?
Not really. But I mean, that's what Farouk is saying, like, where he's like, look, like, to save the world. And she's just like, gross. I'm sorry. I'm with you, Syd. Gross. Ugh. No, find another way to capture this dumb idiot.
I just meant the first time we met her was her, like, working undercover to break David out of a mental institution. She knows how to go undercover. She's good with that.
Yeah, but she
that
wasn't,
is a
like,
big fact. I didn't even think about that. I was
bang
like, yeah.
Clark to get to it, She's using her brains, not her boobs, so...
She should use her brains. Like, she should just, like, I'm going to just use my
brains. She should use her brains and her boobs. Jeez!
Definitely not.
I know, I'm kidding.
There's nothing wrong with using every asset at your disposal.
That's smart. That's brains. Using everything is brains. No, but, like, she should just use her brains and just did the same thing, but talking to him and try to convey that rather than going the love route that Farouk is. But we'll see. So
yeah, I'm interested to see because the plan, of course, was also thwarted. D3's, Division 3's plan, which I love, the forces of division versus the forces of multiplication. Is that's what they're called, as set up last episode, is that it was the Reaches, is that David calls his group the forces of multiplication, so they're fighting the forces of division. So, Division 3, their plan...
if you combine them...
Quantum physics, if you use the photons and the electrons that convert... I'm sorry.
But if you divide and multiply, that's how you wind up in, like, negative imaginary number territory, and how you break the universe and thus the world. So when the forces of multiplication fight the forces of division, the world ends, and
you literally get the capital I, which is that it does not exist. That's...
I thought it was lowercase I in imaginary numbers. I don't remember math, guys.
I was gonna say, I don't know what math class y'all talking about, but I didn't make it to that one.
But anyway, so they're trying to find Lenny and capture Lenny.
Yeah.
So they're trying to use poor Squirrel and his make you want to jump, Clark confronting him in this airplane. What did you guys think of that? Did you guys think that they were just straight up killing Squirrel? Like when they just like went full-fledged flying Squirrel?
Yeah.
For a moment.
I was like, they just gave up real quick on that one. I was like, my God. I was like, that was a horrible interrogation. Like, oh, no answer? All right, bye.
I thought so too. I was like, is Division 3 evil now? They just pushed poor Squirrel out of a plane.
I mean, here's the thing. Like, whether you consider how much of a villain you consider David at this point, that's like a debatable topic. But... they're villains to me. Like, they have some good people working for them, like Carrie, and I still like think Syd is a good person. But the instant they started working with Farouk, I'm like, no, your organization is bad now. They went from we captured the biggest bad guy to, you know what? Let's work with him in 5 minutes.
Very, very quick switch.
So I trust nothing in that organization.
And they're also trusting future Syd, which is like, what do we know is real and what's not? And we've all seen that people can wear masks of other people, and we don't know what is happening. So maybe don't listen to this apparition.
So are they just
that
rolling
shows
with?
up to make out? And
Are they just rolling with Farouk because he's a lesser of two evils now? Like, because I agree, it was like he's not a good guy. And if you're rolling with him, going with his plans, it's like
we're trusting him way too much, and I believe that most of those people are under Farouk's control.
Well, I feel like, unfortunately, too, they're just making dumb decisions. Dumb decisions. Because ultimately, Squirrel and the whole parachute thing, like, first of all, Carrie, pay attention. If you're, like, supposed to be dropping a parachute, like, what are you doing? Like, playing Tetris on your iPhone? Pay attention, man.
He said parachute like 10 times. Like, parachute.
I'm like, oh, this is going to go badly. This is going to be a Deadpool
My guy had one
situation where it's
job.
like, yowza. But then we see that ultimately Lenny was using this as a psych out, gets Squirrel, takes him to her Mad Hatter tea party, which I'm so stoked that we finally got to see this, because in all of the promo they showed like this Aubrey Plaza Mad Hatter, and I was like, show me more of this.
That was some next level weird. I can deal with like the giant pig. Well, I don't know which is weirder at this point. The giant pig, like mama birding drugs from its teats, or the like weird Mad Hatter tea party that was just randomly prepped in the middle of the woods.
Okay, I feel like Mad Hatter Tea Party way less weird than like giant gas teat.
I'm gonna go with that one as well.
I don't know. Somehow it's on an even keel for me.
Well, what did you guys think too about this whole time up all the past 2 seasons? We always see with the drugs and everything is that it's blue. It's always blue. That's a big recurring thing. Now this rage that he's felt because of Syd's rejection, it's now turned red and is making people freak the F out. And then now we're giving Squirrel this red liquid. What do you guys think that this is indicative of?
I mean, the drugs are like a distilled thing from David, right?
Yeah.
So it's just channeling whatever he's feeling at the time, which is a really dangerous thing to have with somebody who has psychosis issues.
Exactly, especially with it turning angry now. We still don't know what his actual plan is, so I don't know how that's going to really affect, like, what the followers are going to do, because they're angry now. They used to be all happy and peaceful and drugged out. But, yeah, it's going to be interesting to see how that's going to change them.
Yeah. They're kind of terrifying now. It's like a weird, like, zombie monster scenario.
It went from, like, hippie jam band music and stuff, like 70s commune, which is like the only reason I'm wearing this weird sweater that looks like I tried
to go a little 70s too.
So he has a blue on, so he had the blue, not the red smoke.
Yeah, I'm feeling good today, guys.
Yeah, you're into it.
Yeah, this like whatever. I don't even know what to call this thing. It looks like I made it out of hemp.
It's a poncho, man.
Is it a poncho?
Yeah, it's a
Whatever
poncho.
it is, it looks comfy.
All right.
I dated enough hippies in my day to know that's a poncho, bro. Anyway.
But it went from hippie jam band to like metal show.
From fish to corn real quick.
Yeah, I thought that's a much more compact analogy. Yeah, I was expecting them to start moshing in that room when it went red.
And they basically did. I mean, it was pretty intense. I feel like that's almost too like this whole, when we keep seeing this narcissistic analogy, is we see a lot of empaths that are drawn to narcissists, and then they start feeling all of these negative emotions when all of these kind of cycles go through. And I feel like this is almost like a heightened version of that. And then we see Carrie ultimately get kidnapped and brought in to try to basically using his techniques to create an amplifier for Switch's powers so that David can be brought into this force field. What did you guys think about having Carrie full-fledged brainwashed at this point?
See, once we saw that he's brainwashed, I'm like, what is he not gonna do? Because he said he wasn't gonna kill him and stuff, but like, is that believable now? Because he's brainwashing even his closest friend's Lenny. So there's really, like, if he's motivated to kill her or kill him for some small reason, he might justify it in his own head. So I don't know where he's at mentally. That like there's literally nothing he won't do, and that's what I got from that scene. Because that was one of his closest friends. He's like, nope, I'm changing your mind or whatever. And it's going to be interesting.
But it's, again, his friend who tried to lock him away against his will. So I think he sees a justification for the behavior there. And, yeah, I mean, I don't think he wants to hurt these people. He's looking for a way to fix the things that he's done wrong and protect the world at the same time. His methods may not be very good, and but I think he's also seeing
his methods.
Yeah, nicely done. But I think in his mind, he's like, I'll do this to you now, but once we succeed, it's all gonna go away anyway. Well, if his idea is to go back in time and prevent all of this from happening, then they won't have experienced any of this. They'll be back to their lives as they should have been.
He sees it almost like a video game where it's like the whole consequences thing that we see reiterated on Switch's tape is that there are consequences for your actions and there are consequences of time travel. David is trying to wipe away all of those consequences, which goes directly against Rule 13, which is that the present is the future, is the past, that this is all one, who you are in one moment. It's like the same thing. It's like, look, if you are, kind of a bummer person at home and you go on vacation to the Bahamas, you're going to just be a bummer person in the Bahamas. You're not going to change who you are entirely. You might have like a happier time, but like, the person that you are is going to be the same no matter kind of your
what
external
are you quoting?
It's a travel agency who actually said that. Who was like, don't get mad at us if you're like a bummer person at home and you go on vacation and you're still a bummer.
Okay, I thought it was a movie or a TV show, but I've definitely I've heard that before.
Yeah. But I mean, I feel like with this whole thing it's like, dude, you're manipulating your friend, and Carrie with his whole weird, like, getting in his head and this whole Carrie dance. And then David taking over and then saying, no, I lead. And he's leading now Carrie's whole personality. It's very unsettling.
Yeah. I mean, that's like, I thought that was a really cool way to visualize the idea of taking over somebody's mind. Like, you could do it easily without any of that, where it just, you see the shift in that person, like their eyes go glazed, their eyes get glazed over, and all of a sudden you're doing Avengers, the first one with the scepter, but to go into his headspace, and the dance is a perfect analogy. The idea of who's leading the dance of what's going on in your brain.
Carrie had some awesome like dance moments too, where he's like behind the woman who was bringing the tray so that he could like manipulate and get out. This was just a very well choreographed episode. I really, really liked it.
That was so weird when he's shadowing her.
I was gonna say, when I watched it, I was like, this is great, but like, how is it this easy for him to just get out? And then he just walks right into David's cave or whatever. So I was like, there's no way he's just gonna just walk out of this place.
Waltz right out, literally.
Literally.
So, any kind of final thoughts on the episode before we dive into our special segment here?
Well, I'm gonna save that because we were just talking about it, but I have some for predictions. So
okay.
I thought this was a really, really good episode. I think it's very interesting the way that we're going down this. Like, it's sort of
rabbit hole. Say rabbit hole. I'm sorry, I got really excited about the Wonderland illusion.
We're following David's story, and to see him deal with whether he's dealing with the question of whether he's the villain or not, while we, the audience, are still questioning that same thing, because he's been the hero of our story to this point, and so you want to root for him, because, like, for me, I want to see him get better. I want to see this person be healthier than he is right now, because I've watched him for this many seasons, but he keeps doing bad stuff, so it gets deeper and deeper down that rabbit hole of being closer, or he's on that board where he's pushing past anti-hero and moving into villainy.
I just want to see justice.
I'm on the same mind space as that, because like I'm optimistic, hoping there's going to be a turn. I just don't know what's going to be the determining factor, what's going to change him. Because at first I thought it was going to be Syd. It doesn't really look like Syd's going to, at the moment, Syd's not really changing his mind. He might just play the love card and everything, but it's not really changing what he wants to do. So I'm really interested to see who's going to be that changing factor in his life.
Or if that even comes to fruition at all. But we also have the added element in this show of kind of having this breakdown of what's real and what's fake, which brings us to our special segment where we kind of analyze what is real and what is not, that we aptly title, Is This the Real Life? Is this just fantasy? Ha ha! What do you guys think? What was your favorite moment where reality you think broke and we saw David's version of reality?
I don't think the Mad Hatter Tea Party was there. I think that was like a weird fabrication that was projected into everybody's mind once they got there. It was like there to screw with Squirrel and try to find out what he might have told them, and then to like draw. I don't know. I'm curious if Lenny knew that it was real or not. I don't think she did. I think she thought it was real, but it wasn't really happening.
So in other words, you think Squirrel's nuts?
I actually don't think Squirrel's nuts, because I think he was just forced to see something that he didn't want to. He's perfectly sane. He's just addicted to vapor.
Legit.
So for my scene, I had to do the two Carries dancing. When I was watching, I was like, all right, I'm kind of confused. Is like, do they have a connection where she can just come in and talk to him? And then when you see David, I was like, okay, that's just in David's head. But that was my confusing moment. Is this reality or is this fantasy? And then you kind of see it's fantasy. David's making it up. But that was one of my moments, because I know they have obviously they have a connection, and I just thought maybe it was stronger, and they're showing new things in this episode. But then obviously it was just David controlling his mind and then eventually taking it over.
I thought that was a really, really cool scene. Mine, I think, was less of a David reality switch, and it was Farouk when he was singing O Tannenbaum and everything was black and white, and then having Syd kind of snap him back into reality and seeing the color and everything pop up is kind of a reference to and kind of an illusion of, don't forget, a nice reminder that Farouk has the ability to kind of switch these ideas and kind of implant ideas in your head too. And he even goes in that scene where he's kind of talking about like the false realities when she's saying that David thinks that he's the villain at this point, and he's saying, you know, David can implant his own version. Basically, we all see the world through our own filters, so he's not going to change. If he thinks that his reality is fixed and the rest of the world is going around him, I thought that was kind of ironic that it was Farouk saying that. So
yeah, we can't trust him.
It's like, what? Can you give us all the answers, and we're just gonna trust you, even though we hated you the last 2 seasons? But it's fine. We totally understand. It's like, no, it doesn't work like that.
Like, you switched from like, yeah, maybe like David messed some stuff up, but you switched to like siding with his abuser while you did it. So you're not on the good side either.
I will say though, the makers of this show are very trustworthy, and we can trust them to continue to bring us awesome content. There's actually a little bit of news this week as well.
AfterBuzz TV News.
Where Noah was actually talking about, the showrunner was talking about the show in a New York Times article, and kind of talking about how Noah Hawley wanted to let everybody know that this final season, especially after kind of the flack that they got last season for how the rape thing was portrayed, was that he said this pivoted away from a more traditional male narrative after David did something that we can't morally tolerate. Then he stressed the responsibility of the superhero media and kind of pop culture in general to address teen boys directly in the way that men use power to, on a human level, do evil to women. And that he was trying to use this show as kind of an allegory for that. And I think that's pretty friggin' awesome. So, yeah, Noah Hawley, snaps to you. The news is that you rock and we like you. But before we get out of here, let's get some predictions from you guys, too.
And now, your AfterBuzz TV predictions.
do you want to go first?
All right, I'm gonna drop
break it down.
I'm gonna drop the big theory on you guys because I'm only here filling in, so I gotta throw out throw in the big stuff.
I feel like you're like, after the news, let me very carefully say what I'm trying to say.
Look, I drop double entendres like I drop sweat. I don't know.
We're not gonna hashtag you, Zach. You're fine. You're
Oh,
good.
no. Oh, I just mean like I speak in double entendres like a language, so it's gonna happen by accident or on purpose, regardless. No, my crazy theory on with this show, and I think this episode is sort of giving me more and more evidence towards it, is that I think the majority, if not all, of the characters, save Farouk, are somehow split personalities living inside David's head. And I don't know how they're going to piece all that together. I don't have all the answers, but I think the Carries, Switch, potentially even Syd, if you get down to it, could all be different facets of David. I'm basing this on partially on comic book lore that they have not explored yet, but the idea that all of their different powers are just something that David could manifest and utilize, and that's because they're all a part of him.
I think you're right. I think it's very much like a Crazy Jane type scenario.
And so it becomes this. Once that becomes this, the story, it's even crazier of a narrative because of how it becomes a story about like self-harm at the end of the day, which is tragic in a crazy way that only this show could ever pull off.
I feel like if that's the storyline, they're gonna pull a Game of Thrones and put too much into like a couple episodes, because that's so much to unpack.
No, this show is so dense. I feel like they could do it.
Yeah.
I mean, you have what, 8 episodes left to figure it out?
Yeah. And it was the best pilot I think I've ever seen on TV. So I feel like they're going to have a finale that's going to be just as good. Especially since they're ending on their own terms. They're not getting canceled. They're choosing to end after the season, which makes me think that it's set up 3 seasons as like a 3-act play. And so this is going to be where we get the climax and the denouement, like probably within the next 4 episodes or so.
Definitely. Yeah, so I got to throw my prediction out there real quick. I saw a little territory being taken with Lenny early in the show, talking to Switch. So I can kind of see Switch maybe causing a division between Lenny and David. And I see that I don't know if it's going to happen, but maybe once Lenny realizes that she's being taken advantage of mentally, she might be the one to turn on David. And I can see not only Switch causing a division, but also David using his powers as another factor into that. And then she might turn on David.
I hope that does happen. I hope she switches it up. I'm into it. But yeah, I'm very excited. We got a little teaser that we're going to see some of David's parents next week. So I think we might see an existential crisis going down with some Professor X.
Yeah, and who's their mom going to be in this canon?
Is it going to be Gabrielle? Is it going to be, I don't know. We'll find out. We'll find out. But until then, where can everybody find you guys?
I'm Zach Wilson. You can find me on Twitter and Instagram at @ThatZachWilson. If you love Marvel stuff, be sure to check out Marvel Movie News, which is over on the Popcorn Talk Network. And if you like character shipping, and you like 2 characters from different universes that might hook up together, check out my other podcast, Ships in the Night, where that's literally all we do. What if Jon Snow hook up with Elsa? You can listen on our show and find out.
Lots of snow.
And if you like other superhero shows, I'm on the Swamp Things TV show, and we are doing what is it? I'm doing All That on Sundays. I'm doing Euphoria on Sundays. So hey, just catch me on AfterBuzz, and you guys can find me at JeffWill_Jr.
I'm Alana Jordan. You guys can find me on Twitter at Alana Jordan and on Instagram at Alana J Jordan. And you can catch us here next week on AfterBuzz TV. See you guys then. Bye.
Our founder, Keven Undergaro, and me, Maria Menounos, would like to thank you for tuning in to AfterBuzz TV. Remember, we're not just the first, we're the biggest in the world, and we're the only destination for all your favorite TV shows. Whatever you crave, we've got it. So go to AfterBuzzTV.com and check out our lineup. Buzz you later.
The views expressed herein are those of the hosts only and do not necessarily reflect the views of AfterBuzz TV or its owners or principals.